Welcome to the Choice Skills Show. I'm George Rogers, your host, and I'd like to take just a couple minutes today to sort of reground us on what the show's all about and what we're really talking about here and why it's important to us. It all comes back to something that Benjamin Franklin said, and I'm just going to quote it here briefly. He said, "As the happiness or real good of man consists in right action, and right action cannot be produced without right opinion, it behooves us, above all things in this world, to take care that our opinions of things be according to the nature of things. The foundation of all virtue and happiness is thinking rightly." Well, what we want to do in this whole video series, or this whole Choice Skills series, if you will, is to explore the nature of things and to understand how the nature of things influences our ability to be happy and productive and fruitful in life. And of course, this is of tremendous importance to those of you who homeschool and to others who work with youth, because this is what we're all about. We're trying to help young people develop these skills so that they can negotiate their way through a very troubling world that they're facing right now, a very challenging world. It's rapidly changing and shifting on them in ways that they may not be very well prepared for. In fact, a large number of our youth are not well prepared for. And so that's what we're all about. And perhaps you'll remember that a couple of episodes ago we talked about a survey or a study that was done in 1991 and was published in a book titled "The Day America Told the Truth." And it was the result of researchers spread across the United States interviewing hundreds of people on the same day, asking them questions about what they believed and thought. And the researchers concluded that 93% of those they interviewed, and it was their belief that this represented the population of the United States as a whole, felt that there was no moral standard other than their own opinion to guide them. That in a sense they created their own moral compass for making choices and decisions. And what I'm doing in the subsequent videos since then is exploring how this explains so many of the problems that we're experiencing in the world, and why so many people are so unhappy, and why so many people are experiencing the tremendous challenges that so many are, and which, by the way, create challenges for those who are associated with them and a large number of people besides. And so last episode we talked about the nature of theft or robbery or stealing. And we talked about the 54% of those interviewed who said that they thought it was okay to steal from others on occasion. And I thought, there was another part of that discussion that I wished had been asked, another question I would have been asked, and that question would have been, well, now, how do you feel about others stealing from you? And I suspect that less than 54% would have thought that was okay. Because the nature of stealing is a zero-sum game. There's winners and losers, theoretically. And theoretically, those who get away with the goods are the winners, and those who lose the goods are the losers. Now, this plays out in a lot of different ways, because then that enters into a new zero-sum game, in which we are the hunted and the hunters, and the hunted and the winners are the hunters when they catch the hunters and catch the hunted. I'll get this right. And the hunters and the hunted who get away appear to be the winners. But are they really? Is that the way to live? Is that how people want to live their lives? And I suspect that when it comes right down to it, in the end, most of those who become the hunted are not really pleased with their situations. Well, today we want to talk about the nature of addiction, because I think there was something like 49%, 41%, I guess it was, of those who were interviewed that said that they thought that it was okay to engage in recreational drugs. Well, let's take a look at that and see what the consequences are. I found this quote from an article published in the February edition of the 2002 Scientific American most instructive. It reads,
quote, "Perhaps the most ironic aspect of the struggle for survival is how easily organisms can be harmed by that which they desire. The trout is caught by the fisherman's lure, the mouse by cheese, but at least these creatures have the excuse that bait and cheese look like sustenance. Humans seldom have that consolation. The temptations that can disrupt their lives are pure indulgences. No one has to drink alcohol, for example, when realizing a diversion has got out of control is one of the great challenges of life." Close quote. Here are a couple of definitions of addiction. The state of being enslaved to a habit or practice to do something that is psychologically or physically habit-forming, such as narcotics, to an extent that its cessation causes severe trauma. Webster provides this helpful definition: addiction is a compulsive need for and use of a habit-forming substance, as heroin, nicotine, or alcohol, characterized by tolerance and by well-defined physiological symptoms upon withdrawal. Broadly, persistent compulsive use of a substance known by the user to be harmful. Both definitions are helpful, but neither is complete. For example, there are very serious addictions that have nothing to do with substance abuse, such as viewing pornography and gambling, which are ruinous to a lot of lives. Not to mention things like food disorders and television addiction. The operative word here is compulsive. It's as though the original choice or sequence of choices has led now to a loss of freedom to choose differently or to act differently than they're doing, and in most cases would prefer to choose and act differently, but they've lost the freedom to make that choice. And in a way, this is a really voluntary enslavement. Those original choices, which were choices in the first place, led them into a place where now they can no longer choose for themselves in the ways that they might prefer. Benjamin Franklin described this condition over 300 years ago. He had this to say, quote, "The good of man cannot consist in the mere pleasures of sense, because when any one of these objects which you love is absent, or cannot be come at, you are certainly miserable, and if the faculty be impaired, though the object be present, you cannot enjoy it, so that the essential good depends upon 1,000 things without and within you, and all out of your power. Can this then be the good of man? Can that be called the good of man, which even while he is tasting it, he may be miserable, and which, when he cannot taste, he is necessarily so? Can that be our good, which costs us a great deal of pains to obtain, which cloys in possessing, for which we must wait the return of appetite before we can enjoy again?" The hard reality is that a very large measure of human suffering is the result of the misguided pursuit of happiness. It embraces a range of behaviors way beyond just our present conversation, but certainly includes it. And in each case, it is a direct result of a failure to understand both the nature of happiness and the nature of the things pursued to gain happiness. Our greatest responsibility, then, is to help our young to develop the emotional, social, and thinking skills that will enable them to understand the nature of things and prepare them to be able to make sound, responsible choices. According to Franklin, developing this ability is so important it behooves us above all other things to accomplish it and to pass it on to our children to empower them with the ability to live full, productive, and fruitful lives. Thanks for being with me today. I invite you to join us for our next Choice Skills show, where we will explore the nature of substances that are addictive. What is there about them that makes them harmful? What is there about them that makes them addictive? And what are the effects that come from this addiction? And so we're going to be looking at the nature of addiction with respect then to specific drugs that people might take.